Hey friends, today I'm going to go through everything you need to know about Gauntlet in Pirate Nation. Let's jump right into it. First, let me give you the lay of the land. On the bottom left here, you'll see the number of action points you have that turn. And on the bottom left here of each card, you'll see the number of action points required to play that card. Here are the cards remaining in your deck, your card graveyard, and each turn you're dealt about 5 cards without buffs and such. On the top, you can see the mob's next move, and you can hover over that icon to get an idea of what that specific move will do. Mobs will always follow the same attack pattern, so as you get better, you should start remembering what moves are coming next so you can prepare for those attacks. On the bottom left, you'll find a game mechanic called Stowaway, and this allows you to use action points to save a card from your current hand and return it to your hand next turn. It's kind of annoying though. You can't click and drag it to apply. You really have to press Control click. So let me just do Act with Haste, for example. And then I'll end turn. And you can see that I spent 2 action points to stow this card away. And then that card then gets returned as one of my 5 cards in my next hand. Depending on the boat that you have, it could be either 2 action points or 1 action point. Or depending on a buff, it could even be 0. But yeah, again, you really do have to control click to apply it. You can't click and drag, which is actually quite annoying. And I hope the game devs fix this. Although I normally just use the shortcuts. Good thing to know is you only have 50 rounds to beat the gauntlet. And if you can't, you'll lose. You'll be surprised to find out that actually happens more than you would think. Affinity is a key mechanic to understand in Gauntlet, which works similar to the elemental strengths and weaknesses you'd expect. In certain matchups, you'll deal 10% more damage and take 10% less damage, or the opposite. Against non-neighboring affinities, there is no impact. You can check Pirate's affinity here on the top left, and then you can check the mob's affinity by hovering over that mob and looking at the top right. So my affinity is air, so I deal 10% more damage and take 10% less damage against water, which would be this guy, and the opposite against lightning. So if all is correct, he should be doing about 16 damage to me, and he should be doing about 18 damage to me. So let's take a look. So I'll take 10% more damage on this first attack. So instead of 15, we're expecting 16, and then I'll take 18 damage instead of 20. Here's a couple more useful things to know. Damage is generally rounded down, so if you have an attack that deals 15 damage, it will only do 7 damage. It's a small detail, but it can make a big difference in close fights. So if we can take a look here, 15, I have 157, and there you go, it only did 7 damage here. Another important aspect to understand is how different attacks and effects interact, and whether they stack in a layer or act as a queue. So for example, damage reduction is layered, meaning a single attack will remove both at the same time. So let's say I do throwing shot here, throwing shot again. I have both of these damage reductions, but both will be removed after the first attack. So in this case, 15 divided by 2 is 7.5, divided by 2 is 3.75, but because damage rounds down, I'll only take 3 damage. I have 36 right now. I should end at 33. This is actually a little bit annoying because the fact that it acts as a layer means that if there's 2 attacks, the first attack will wipe out both effects. And this is important to know because sometimes you would think that it works as a queue, like it'll have the first attack and have the second attack, and you'll plan out your moves accordingly, but realize that it actually doesn't work that way. In contrast, evasion by itself acts as a queue. So let's say I do this and then this. These 4 evasions act as a queue, and you'll see because after this attack, I'll still have 3 evasions left. In contrast, evasion and damage reduction works as a layer. So even though I have both of these buffs, that one attack will remove both at the same time. See? Play around with a few of these and you'll get a better idea of how the different cards interact. You'll want to have a good understanding of this if you want to properly plan out what would be the most strategic thing to do. Another important thing to know is that debuffs generally apply to the leftmost buffs first. So if this guy had 2 buffs, this basic relief would just debuff the first debuff on the left. Now here's some shortcuts and settings for you to save time in Gauntlet. You can double click a card to play it, and the priority will go to first your own boat, and then to the last mob you attacked. So let's say it's this guy. If I double click, it'll attack him again. And then if not, then it will go to the leftmost mob. Be careful though sometimes because you might want to spread out your attack or remove an effect on the opponent instead of yourself. Finally, here's a few settings I like to adjust. I like to turn off the auto end turn prompt, and sometimes you can't do it in the Gauntlet, which is kind of annoying. So you actually have to flee. And then you can do it right here. I like to disable the auto end turn prompt because there are a few situations where you might not want to play all your playable cards. There's also an auto end turn, which I don't recommend unless you're more familiar with it, because as of today, it doesn't take into account the option to stow away. So it will auto end your turn, even though you could still technically stow away a card. I guess if you have it in Gauntlet, you could maybe go up to the settings and change it. But again, it's a little annoying, and I do hope the game devs fix this because it does save you a lot of time to have auto end turn turned on. This is probably everything you would need to know about Gauntlet. And if you're looking for more advanced strategies to beat hard Gauntlet or some of these harder world boss Gauntlet games, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment on what other guides I should make, or come hang out during my stream sometime on Twitch. And otherwise, I'll see you on the next video.